Julie, and this is Writing in the Margins. I'm an author who writes science fiction and fantasy for adults and children, and sometimes I write like contemporary type young adult stuff, but I mostly focus on speculative fiction and the like. And I also write nonfiction. I'm the author of The Invisible Orientation, which is a book about asexuality, and that is something I want to talk to you about today. Asexuality means that you're not sexually attracted to other people, and that describes me. And I'm also aromantic, which means that I'm not romantically attracted to people either. And there's a lot of confusion about this subject in the world, but I'm going to focus on how it appears in fiction in my videos on this channel. And first of all, I just want to talk about why this is so important to me, because as I was growing up, there really wasn't anybody like me in any of the stories that I read, especially since I read so far above my grade level at the beginning of my life, just 3-4 grades above where I was supposed to be. I was just early in my life picking up these books that made it very clear I was supposed to be interested in boys, and a lot of people said, oh, you just aren't interested in that sort of thing because you're so young. But as I got older, those kinds of messages still weren't compelling to me. And what I ended up grabbing onto was the science fiction and fantasy. And here's the reason that I think that was so compelling to me, besides the fact that it's just really neat, is science fiction and fantasy deliberately describes experiences that none of us have had, whereas a lot of the romances and contemporary fiction that incorporates romance kind of assumes that you know what it's like and that you've been there and that you're bringing your own experiences of those things to the table, so they don't really have to go into much detail to describe what it's like to have butterflies in the stomach or sexual attraction and all that other stuff. And I couldn't relate to that sort of thing at all, but science fiction and fantasy writers often know that they're writing something you can't have been through. They're writing about something that's on another planet, or they're writing about a magical world that they know you've never been to. So I like to say they leave a lot of handholds sticking out for you to grab onto. And so that's what I did. I don't know if I would have gravitated towards science fiction and fantasy quite as much if there hadn't been something there that felt more familiar to me than some of these other things that were happening in the romance and the sex and all that stuff that they were expecting would be really appealing to me, even as a young adult reader. So as I got older, I started to notice that there really weren't characters that had an asexual or aromantic experience in the world, and that was really disheartening. So I did write the nonfiction book about the whole concept of asexuality and trying to bring it into the mainstream, but I think there needs to be more of that in mainstream fiction as well. You really don't see asexual characters. You really don't see people to whom sexual relationships and romantic relationships aren't like a driving central force in their lives. And a lot of times if there isn't a relationship like that for the main character, it's clear why there isn't, because there's something else that's more pressing in their lives, like an adventure story, or the world is ending, or some terrible disaster is happening. But even in those situations, a lot of times they still manage to put romance in there. Some time ago, the writer of Sherlock was asked if Sherlock was supposed to be an asexual person because he wasn't shown expressing interest in anybody, and he said, oh no, I would never write a character like that because asexual people aren't interesting. There's no tension, there's nothing to write about. What fun is that? And I can't believe that someone would say something like that, because asexuality and aromanticism and all those things actually are really interesting. And, their sexual tension isn't the only way to make a character interesting. So I would really like to see people trying that. What kind of authors are we if we can't make something or someone interesting without putting sexual tension into their relationships? I think that we're better than that. We have so much to work with. So anyway, that's just how I'm going to wrap this up. I really would like to see more about asexuality and aromantic characters showing up in future stuff. TV, movies, and of course literature. And in the future I do plan to write a young adult contemporary book with a main character who is a lesbian asexual. So I'm looking forward to getting started on that sometime in the second half of 2015. And maybe I'll be one of the first ones to publish a book with an asexual main character in it. There are a few others that I will talk about in future videos. So anyway, that wraps it up, and thanks for watching.